My friends, there are two accounts of creation in the book of Genesis. Not one, but two. Yesterday and the day before, we heard the account from Genesis chapter 1, and it told us how God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. Today we have listened to the second account of creation, found immediately afterwards in Genesis chapters 2 and 3. There are differences, contradictions even, between the two, but ultimately this is not the point of these ancient and wonderful stories. The creation stories tell us about who we are, about our relationship with God, and our relationship with the world that surrounds us. We're not here by happenstance or by accident. The universe exists because a loving God freely desired to share his own life with us. Everything we are depends on God, who holds and sustains us every moment. As one mystic put it, we can breathe in, we can inhale, because God breathes out, God exhales. The creation stories assure us that we are created in God's image and likeness, formed with freedom and called to be responsible. We have the capacity to speak with God, and that is the foundation of all our prayer. The Genesis text also stresses the equality of woman and man. They tell us that while we are different, we complement each other, both equal in God's sight. For too long, these texts were mistakenly read to suggest that woman was inferior or below. Genesis reminds us of the goodness of creation. God saw all that he had made, and indeed it was good. That's why the heavens and the earth proclaim the glory of God. Soil, water, mountains, everything is a caress of God. The word creation has a broader meaning than nature, for it has to do with God's loving plan in which every creature has its own value and significance. Nature is usually seen as a system which can be studied or understood or controlled, whereas creation can only be understood as a gift of God from the outstretched hands of the Father of all. There is an intrinsic link between humans and all of creation. Today's reading tells us the Lord God formed us out of the clay of the ground. And while yesterday's reading talks about humans having dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the cattle of the land, today's reading reminds us that this is not a license to use or abuse creation. No, as the text tells us today, we are called to cultivate and care for the earth. Earlier this week, I read of Sister Dorothy Stang. Do you know who she is? Well, Sister Dorothy was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1931, and she was to join the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. In 1966, she volunteered to work in Brazil and found herself in the remote areas of the Amazon. The poor farmers who tilled that land were being dispossessed by unscrupulous loggers and cattle barons. Sister Dorothy had come to know the connection between defending the rights of the poor and protecting the environment in which they lived. On February 12, 2005, Sister Dorothy was assailed by 2 hired gunmen who asked her if she was carrying any weapon. In reply, she produced her Bible and began to read the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the peacemakers. And then they shot her. Her tragic death forces us to recognize that the Lord hears both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. This planet, this world is a gift from God. It is our common home, Pope Francis tells us, where there is space and place for all. And when we plant a seed, avoid waste, or clean up pollution, we recognize each other as brother and sister, daughters and sons of the Father, the loving Creator of us all.